Hey friends. Something showed up recently that really struck me. This is again sort of coming out of the book that I'm reading about how we perceive time and how we frequently in our sort of contemporary society take a perspective on time that keeps us trapped in a variety of ways. The primary one, or at least a primary one that the author had described in the most recent section of the book that I read, he sums it up as called purposiveness. Purposiveness. And I don't think that's his term. I think he's drawing that term from other thinkers, other writers. But it basically describes someone for whom every activity in the present is a means to some future outcome. And therefore, it describes a way of existing, a way of living that never arrives anywhere, because it's always oriented towards some future outcome or result or state of affairs. And the author gets Oliver Berkman is his name, and the book is 4,000 Weeks. If you haven't been listening to my posts for the last 3 or 4 days, it's kind of all I've talked about. One of the areas of life where he describes this, and it sort of led to a revelation of his, was in relationship to his young child. He had a baby. His wife had a baby. They had a young son. And because he at the time was a kind of time management guru and an efficiency obsessive, he read all these parenting books and was getting really informing himself about how best to raise this child, right? How to get the best, how to help this child have the best future life. And somewhere in there, his recognition dawned. Wait, this feels like a perverse approach, because my child is only going to be 0 years old or 1 year old, less than 1 year old, for a very short time. If I orient everything I'm doing at this point towards some future goal of how this human being might turn out, what if I'm missing the point? And that's I think his choice of example in his own life to illustrate this issue really struck me. And purposiveness, that sort of, when I heard him use that term and when I heard him describe that approach, it definitely hit home with me, because I was like, ooh, I've done that. I've done that a fair amount. You know, I'll pursue things in my life that I truly love. Music or creative work. With it, but my intention is sometimes subtly shifted towards the future. In other words, it doesn't matter so much what's happening now on piano or whatever. It's all going somewhere else. And funny enough, this is something that my piano teacher, Madeline, I think, is doing her best to disinstill in me, to reprogram in me, so that my focus stops being about one day I'm going to be able to play this better, and becomes about, here's what I'm seeing right now. In fact, talking about this reminds me of a time when I was studying with one of my early jazz piano mentors, a guy named Alan Swain. Wonderful. By the time I met him, he was probably in his 70s. He worked in Evanston, Illinois at the time. I think he's moved now. But Alan, I was sitting at the piano one day. I went in for my lesson, and he said something like, "Robin, you're playing as though someday in the future the notes are going to be there. But that's not how you play jazz." And obviously to this day, I remember that comment, because it was so penetrating, not just with regard to my playing, but with regard to the way I was living my life. And I think I've made strides. I think I've certainly shifted over the years into a different mode. But I catch myself, when I heard Oliver Berkman describing his relationship with his son, I was reminded of my relationship with my daughter, and the fact that we have these activities that we do together, like practicing violin. And I noticed myself, this listening to the book evoked for me these memories of how I've subtly taken the focus of what we're doing in the moment and shifted it onto a future outcome. So instead of really being with what's happening now, I shift the focus onto where it's going, as though the fact that there's a future, a better future, is supposed to somehow alleviate the difficulty of now, or the resistance that Annalise might be experiencing. And I thought to myself, maybe that's not what I should be doing. It's not that you can't understand that practice is an ongoing continuum, and that, of course, you're going to be more advanced in the future. I mean, that is part of why you're working, right? You're hoping to master skills. But at the same time, we don't want to place so much focus on the future outcome that we're not even connected to the moment now. So this morning when I woke up with Annalise, that was present in my mind, and I went upstairs, and with her we practiced violin right up here, and we started working, and I was I sort of did an inner check, and I was like, well, let me not emphasize where this is all going. Let's just be present with what we're doing now and what because Annalise has a constant desire to play, endless desire to play games. She wants to be playing, and I learned I had already made great strides towards recognizing that if violin is too much about drilling and practicing, then it's no fun for her and she resists it. And so I'd already kind of learned to back off quite a bit, even just in the last couple of months of working with her. But this morning it was even more present for me, so I really kind of took a step back. And what I've noticed over the last couple of days, and it kind of culminated today, is when I do that, rather than my agenda dictating where I think we need to go, all of a sudden, she has her own impulses. Like yesterday, we were running a little late, or maybe it was 2 days ago that this happened, but we were running a little late, couldn't quite get through. I knew we were only going to have like a minute or two to practice, a couple minutes, 15 minutes to practice, which feels like a minute or two when you're working with a 4-year-old. And so I said, all right, Sweet Pea, let's just play one of these. She's working on her twinkle variations, and I said, let's just play one of them. And I said, I'm going to go sit over here, and I'm just going to listen. You do what you want to do. You can choose. You pick whatever one you want. I was trying to leave it up to her. And then she said, no, Papa, I want to play all 6. And then she played all 6. And I was like, whoa, okay. I would have loved to suggest that, but I wouldn't have dared. And I didn't. And what it made evident was she's got her own impulse to get through, or she's got her own impulse to engage. But if I'm imposing one, then it dilutes hers and it confuses her. And so this morning, today I suggested that we do all 6, and because it's kind of become our routine now. She enjoyed it so much the other day that now it's become what we do every day. And she starts playing, and she plays the first variation, and then she goes immediately, seamlessly, without stopping, into the second variation, and then immediately, seamlessly, into the third variation. And as she started the third variation, she stumbled a little bit. And then she got frustrated, and I was like, hey, what's going on? She was like, I wanted to play all the way through all of them without stopping. And I was like, okay. I would have loved to suggest that, but I wouldn't have ever thought to. And if I had, it would have felt like I'm pushing her to do the next step. And all I had to do was step back. All I have to do is step back and sip my cup of tea And the impulse, the next impulse immediately is free to arise out of her. It's like then she takes the next step on her own, and she comes up with innovative new next steps spontaneously without me having to suggest them. And that's the thing, you know, me as the like adult lifelong musician feel like I know what needs to happen next. She knows what needs to happen next too. She knows better than I do. And so this extracting of my intention from some future thing is having a massive effect in the moment. I'm watching it manifest in little epiphanies and little moments of real growth that I'm not driving. And it's not my job to drive them. Maybe it's my job to hold space for them. But that's it. And so this kind of purpose to not be so purposive, the intention to bring my intention back to this moment, to being here, to being present. It's having a huge effect. It's having a massive effect, you know, in really concrete, tangible, moment-to-moment ways. And it's kind of fun. It's almost like learning to surf a wave. It's like if you're always leaning forward, it's like you're out ahead of the wave. You can't quite catch it. But just resting into the moment, all of a sudden, woof, the wave picks up. You're on the wave, and it carries you. And it's like, oh, that was so effortless. I think that's how it's supposed to work. Anyway, that's where I am today, folks. Thanks for watching. Appreciate you. I love this conversation. It means a great, great deal to me. Thanks so much. Have a great day. See you soon.